in your mind, Matt, in terms of JKD, so we talked about the aliveness of continuing to learn and integrate new skills. We talked about the covering of various different components of combat, how those 5 different dimensions you had outlined are all integrated in GKD as sort of an understanding of martial art. Maybe it's a little bit too limiting to even ask it this way, but in terms of GKD skills, or we might even just say self-defense skills from your perspective as a GKD guy, that you would consider most important for the average kind of Joe out there. What for you sort of is most important? Let me give you a situation. A lot of our readers are, 40, 50, 55, sometimes even 60-year-old fellas, mostly guys here, obviously, and for them, they probably can't train 7 days a week, and they probably got kids, and they're probably not an Olympic wrestler level athleticism, but they would want to train a little, and they'd want to pick up the stuff they could to kind of be safer and have their family be safer. In terms of core martial and self-defense skills that you would teach that guy, the accountant or the guy that works at the railroad company or whatever, 40-something-year-old dude, what would be sort of tip-top on your list from your own perspective, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I think it first comes down to conceptually understanding that, once again, there are those 5 areas of self-defense. It also comes down to limiting the amount of options that you have. I'm sure you're very familiar with this, just being the competitor that you are. But if you go ahead and you try to master this massive encyclopedia of all the BJJ moves that are out there, not only are you going to be frustrated, but you're never going to get to that point. You need to really niche down, hey, listen, what are your key moves? What are your finishing moves that work consistently? And what can you really focus on? And I think that's the goal that I have for all of my students, is to make sure they have a very simplistic game plan of what to do in every single area of self-defense. So, for instance, if they're, let's say, attacked with a knife, they're not going to have 88 different ways on how to disarm that knife. They're going to have a couple that work consistently up against different kinds of attackers, different height sizes, speed levels, even tolerance of pain levels and things like that. And I think that's what's important to do, is that people realize that, if you're going to master anything, although it's important in my mind to be a jack of all trades, you really need to master a handful of strategies that work consistently. You can't be this walking encyclopedia. I mean, I'm sure you know guys like this, where it's like, they know all these different moves, but they can't pull off any of them, let's say in a competition kind of environment or in a street fighting kind of environment with any kind of accuracy, because, once again, they haven't mastered just a handful of moves that are really their moves, more or less,
Yeah.
I kind of go back to those people. I mean, once again, just kind of speaking in your area of competition, it's like, how does someone get named, let's say, a leg lock master? Well, it's not because they're pulling off all these different moves. It's because they're focusing on leg locks. They've mastered it, and that's the move that they know like the back of their hands, and they can do in their sleep, more or less. And that's what I want to get across to my students, is that, even though we're multi-dimensional with all these different areas, you still have to have a very simplistic game plan. And that's what Bruce Lee was able to really get to us. He was able to rely on that simplicity and say, hey, listen, what is the simple, the most efficient, the most effective way to end this altercation in each given area of self-defense?